Don't try to make anything happen. Rest. Relax right now and rest. So the second part of Brooke's question was, do I ever prescribe meditation? And I've never prescribed meditation for a patient. Like I've never told them, I've never written, I want you to meditate for 30 minutes a day for the next month or so, and come back and see me. I think that I do have patients who are interested in meditation and some who are meditation practitioners. Mostly, I try to let the patients and their families dictate what we work on, and I guess I have gotten over time, as I've become more used to talking about meditation, it does seem to come up more. But I think mostly what I'm doing is encouraging them to do things that they've identified that they think are going to be helpful to them. And sometimes that's meditation. So I did have a patient recently who was feeling disappointed in herself, that she'd been working on her spiritual practice, which was not Buddhist, but for a long time, and she felt like, and I'm still struggling with the same problems that I've always been struggling with. And so in the moment, and I don't know where this came from, it wasn't my idea, but I asked her, well, how does it feel in your body to be just right this moment? How does it feel in your body? And she said, well, I feel really small and weak and helpless. And I was like, okay, and what does that actually feel like? Like, as if, can you feel, are there physical sensations associated with that? And she said, I just feel ashamed, and that I should have accomplished more, and that, I'm 75 years old. How did I end up like this? And I said, okay. And can you feel that in any part of your body? And the answer was actually, she was surprised to find she couldn't. Even if I was like, okay, can you feel your feet in contact with the floor? She's like, okay, yeah, I can feel that. blowing your nose. Can you feel it? Yeah, I can feel that. So the the observation was that, you know, her sort of mind was kind of full of some fairly toxic thoughts, and her emotions were pretty difficult to deal with. But her body, you know, was actually feeling pretty good. Just being totally ignored, but it actually was fine. And so I did encourage her to try to spend some time every day trying to practice awareness of her body, because she really lost that, like, almost entirely. And so the instruction was twofold. One was that if she noticed herself kind of feeling small or kind of running herself down, if she noticed that and she remembered, then I wanted her to see if she could find within her body what, you know, were there physical associations, physical sensations that went along with that, and could she experience those? But of course, I've been trying to do that for years. It's really hard to do. So I also encouraged her to try to practice it during the day. You know, if she was going for a walk or going outside, or in the quiet moments of her life. So I think there was a question in there, is how much success do you find with that? And I guess it's if success is defined by people then do that and then they come back and they report their experiences, not that much success if you define it that way. But if you define success in that moment, are we, you know, do we have a connection, and does it seem beneficial, and does it seem like they're encouraged? Then I would say that works pretty well. And you know, as a physician, I have a idea of what health is supposed to be. But as a, you know, in the talking to people about their spiritual lives, actually don't know how they're supposed to be. So I wouldn't know what to prescribe and wouldn't know whether it worked or not. And if I did think I knew those things, I would probably think I should keep them myself, because I would immediately question how it is that I know how somebody else is supposed to be. So it's a different, but you know, as a physician, I do have some assumptions about that. Peter.
We're following up on that. In terms of body awareness, I have more of a sense of don't prod the sleeping lion.
I mean, when you're 75, everything's supposed to hurt, isn't it?
Supposed to.
But that was the extraordinary thing about this woman. She did not look 75. When she said that, I was
Well, I look
shocked.
68, but boy, some days I feel 75.
Yes. Well,
Yeah.
well, the instruction to get in touch with her body, actually, I guess it came because despite the fact that she has a serious illness, she actually feels pretty good physically. She has a lot of fatigue, but other than that. And there was this disparity between how she felt in her head and how she felt in her heart and how she felt in her body. And in her head, she felt like she was running away from something. But in her body, actually, it turned out she'd gotten a transfusion and her blood count was up and she had extra energy. So actually her body just wanted to move. It didn't want to run away. It was just like, hey, I feel better. I want to go outside. So well, and a classic example is, if you're really having a lot of trouble breathing, if you have a respiratory illness, doing mindfulness of breathing is maybe that's not the right time or the right object of meditation for you, because you're immediately starting with something which requires a great deal of capacity. I think that's the point is, through practice we're trying to develop capacity to be present with and hold in our attention all of our experiences. And so we just need to be respectful and kind and generous with ourselves. Like, what is our capacity? Is this something that we can work with? And also, I think, the kindness comes on the other side too. If we end up in a situation that's beyond our ability, not beating up ourselves or saying, wow, you really blew it, or saying a bunch of derogatory and unhelpful things. Do you want to say any more about that, Peter?
Well, I certainly in that area, and others have a lot of absent awareness, and I certainly suspect that a lot of that is protective, and so there's a part of me that has serious reservations about stirring things up. Maybe they're better left the way they are.
Oh.
In theory, they could be better, but...
Do you want to say something about that, Zopa?
Well, I like your sleeping lion picture. So what I've noticed as I age and body hurts more, got arthritis pretty much everywhere. So it's something you can work with, like the breath, all the time. It takes a certain amount of energy that I didn't notice before to ignore the lion. And we're not counting that. We're saying, oh, I ignored the lion, pretty good, pretty good. But we're always like, oh God, the lion is there. And I hope that cage is really strong because, I don't want them to get out. Oh, here's a day that they're out. I'm having inflammation, We just don't count that part. Like when you say maybe okay to leave it lie, yeah, maybe on certain days, but you need to count in the energy you're spending, not relating to the lion. And it's a kind of, for me, the interior thing is a kind of fear. And so there's a certain amount of energy, like I can, it's like this, like not there, not there, not there, but I have to kind of keep that up. And when, actually it happened this morning, my knee started doing a thing. And then I go off the breath and do some body mindfulness. Now, I really like what Erik brought in about capacity, because you have to notice that. But what I've noticed as I do more shamatha, my capacity grows to be able to drop into that and just actually go right to the knee, call it a sensation instead of pain. Then notice the sensation. Just flirting with it would be a word I would use to make it playful. It's not like, oh my God, what's that like? But just kind of, oh, okay, I'll kind of look at the lion a little bit, like a sideways glance. How's that going? Okay, not too bad. Not getting eaten yet. Maybe I'll, get a little closer. And what I found this morning was it brings some curiosity. That's a thing we don't really talk about, explicitly, but curiosity is a really cool thing because it's neutral. It's like, what's that? And this did not stop having sensation, but I started noticing, wow, they were complex. It wasn't just one thing called pain. It was like heat, kind of a shimmery thing, kind of a sharp thing, and then I forgot about it because something else came up. I probably some fantasy. I think it was, what are we going to have for snacks? Will they be gluten-free? Linda said she'd do some gluten-free. Then I remember, don't plan. So drop that. But you see what I'm saying? So the main thing is we don't count the energy we're spending and the tension of ignoring the lion. That takes a lot. And when we engage it, something loosens. But it is engage it at your capacity, So I think that's how it works for me. I hope that helps.
Just to add to that,
Yeah,
I was just noticing all the A words. You were saying absent awareness, and my mind went to absent or AWOL, and then there's the active, and then just the awareness. But it was like all the different ways. Just as a contemplation, all those like different ways we can be aware, like trying to be unaware, and that's its own awareness.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for pointing that out. Right, because it is, inattention is a kind of attention. And it's an attention that either is trying to push something away or sort of hold something off, or it's an attention that's holding on to something else so that it distracts you from the thing that's going on. And well, I think I mentioned I'm reading this trauma book called "The Body Keeps the Score," and I'm still not very far through it. I'm not sure how it's going to end, Not sure I could recommend it yet, because I think
Tie.
he seems like he's going. He seems like he's going in the right direction, but you never know. He may. But what I think that kind of what Zopa's alluding to is you can't really ever get out of anything.
Right.
It is true that if you distract yourself from pain, usually the pain is less. You know, if you're able to find some way of distracting yourself, you don't notice the pain as much. But I would say that how to say this? Well, I think sometimes it can be a kindness to distract yourself, and that can be skillful and beneficial. And but if that's the only strategy that you have, if that's your go-to move, then I think you are setting some pretty severe limits on yourself, and really not availing yourself of the resources that your body and your mind have for working with pain. I guess there's another book I like that Diane introduced me to. I think the Dissolving Pain book, where the author teaches people to work with the quality of the attention that they're bringing to their pain. And just actually the realization that that's a thing was helpful for me. I guess the classic example is sort of how are you in the dentist chair? Are you like kind of contracting and pulling away, or are you able to sort of relax and let the dentist do their work? And those two attitudes of attention actually have a different experience associated with them, and different actual pain levels associated with it. And there's lots of silly little examples of this. There's a funny experiment where they had people like read a comic with a pencil between their teeth, like this. That kind of like activates the smiling muscles. And they had half of them do that, and the other half, I think they were supposed to hold the pencil with their upper lip, so there's kind of, they're making that face. So the people who had the pencil in their mouth thought the comic was funnier than the people who were like... But it's a powerful illustration of your head doesn't even understand the power that your body has to change your experience, and also that these simple little things can affect the quality of attention that you bring to something, and then changes your experience of them. So if all you've got is distraction, then you're missing sort of a whole, really you're using a very narrow bandwidth of your potential to deal with a problem, which really, once the problem gets to a certain size, you can't manage it anymore through ignorance. Diane?
I think we're trying to put two different things in the same pot.
Yes.
One is ignoring something which is really a problem and pretending it doesn't exist. And really letting the lion sleep on something which is really not bothering me. You know, I have so many injured parts, so many aches and pains, and on any given day, the majority of them aren't bothering me, and I'm so grateful for that.
Yes.
I'm not going to go looking at them. You know?
Yes.
It ain't going to happen, you
Yes.
know? I focus my attention on what hurts now,
Yes.
and I'm not stirring up what's
Yes.
not a problem. I'm sorry, I agree with Peter.
Well,
Um,
oh, yeah, go ahead. Dora, did you want to?
Well, I have some other things, but did you want to?
My response is of course you're right. If ignoring them works, then by all
Well, if it's not
means.
bothering me, why should I stir it up? Make
Well,
it bother me.
What you're saying, though, is that you're at a place where you don't have the luxury of really just ignoring everything. Like something is is poking its way through and bringing itself to your attention.
Right.
So you don't need to go looking for it. It comes looking for you.
Yeah.
So
But
it's a little.
not always the same thing.
So it's a little right.
It's one
Well,
day it's the knee, one day it's the hand, one day it's the neck, the
Yes.
shoulder. You know.
Yes. Well, I think that's the other. But there are people who actually do have the luxury to some degree of being able to push these things out of their awareness and just sort of soldier on. And they haven't gotten to the point where those things are forcing their way in. And I think that's sort of what Peter's talking about. He's got some, maybe not every day, but there are days where if he wants to, he can get away with distracting himself and ignoring the problems, and it works. Is that, don't let me put words in your mouth, but that's how I'm imagining. And but then along the theme of capacity and building capacity, those are the days where you have an opportunity to work with things when they're at a level where you have some choice. And
Well, you can work with them when they're at a really intense level too.
yes, well, you're absolutely right.
There's no, you know, you can work with them at any level. But you know, there's a certain, you know, there's a certain, what's the word I want? It's hard to work with this stuff all the time. And you have to make choices. You know, today I'm going to live my life.
Mhm.
Today I'm going to go and work in the garden even though I know I'm going to hurt. Or today I'm going to, you know, walk over to the store even though I know I'm going to, my
Is
legs
that-
are going to pay for it later.
Yes, is that not working with it? Those things that you described? What's the difference? I guess that's my question.
It's sort of deciding that I can't work with all of it all the time. You know, I'm prioritizing.
How do you know when you're working with it versus you're not?
Well, I guess when I throw my hands up and say, damn it, I wish I didn't hurt so much, I guess I'm not working on it. Then,
But that could just be another working with it.
well,
Other way.
the best way to work with it is to actually, you know, breathe into it and actually look at it. That's the best way to work with it, is to actually look at that pain.
Yeah.
And there's days when you just get so tired you don't want to do this anymore.
Yes.
You know?
Well, so my my question is, or my point is, there's, and this is maybe not, there's a very sort of intense kind of staring, looking, and if you're doing that, then you know you're looking. Like if you're staring at somebody, you know, you know they're looking, and they know you're looking at them. But that's only one. The bringing your attention and working with your awareness doesn't just mean that very intense focus. I think you would agree, and you know better than most of us, if you do that with pain, the pain gets worse. If you really stare at it or concentrate on it. At least that's my experience.
No, it's not.
Well, what I would say is I would leave it to everyone to try for themselves and see. Like if you have a pain in your knee, try concentrating on it and see what happens.
It'll go away. If you see it for what it is, it resolves.
Yes, well, so that's a little different, right? Seeing it for what it is versus concentrating on it, I think, are two different ways of holding something in your attention.
Well, you mean concentrating in the sense of, oh my gosh, it's killing me?
Well, you can, if you concentrate on that, then that goes in a particular direction. And what I would say is, making a decision to do gardening is making a decision to bring the mental state or the qualities of attention that go with gardening to your pain. So I think that is actually a way that you work with your pain.
I don't know. I mean, I kind of know that certain activities are going to make my pain worse, but I want the freedom to choose to do them rather than, sit in a chair like a pain patient.
Yes, well, right. So
And
avoiding
so-
pain is another.
I mean, I can be pretty pain-free if I do nothing.
Mhm.
I do nothing. But I can't live like that.
Mhm.
You know.
So we have, Miriam wants to say something. And
Oh,
maybe
actually,
Cindy
I'm
has
just going
something.
to redirect back to Dora, but
Yeah.
I did want to say, I think we're having some problems with semantics. But anyway, Dora.
I was just appreciating all of you, everybody bringing up the kind of the idea of balance, or sort of not like, if you have a pain, you must, meditate on that constantly until you reach enlightenment. So that really is maybe like it's not balanced, and certainly and I love the idea. It's also like just avoiding looking, avoiding noticing it, and exploring is not helpful too. So in my experience, part of what there's a lot between sort of the body-mind thing, and and I think that's part of what we can learn so I had this situation of having a lot of pain, but for a long time, and having it undiagnosed. So, and it might be this really bad thing to have, but it probably wasn't. But was I getting the right tests? And and no, the tests aren't reliable. Things like that. So that I noticed was much harder to tolerate than simply, oh, okay, I cut my finger. I see what happens. I know how, and I know that heals, and I know, so that loses its sort of mental charge. But when there's that mental story, then to look at the associated pain, it's very hard to not trigger and fly off into the story. And of course, then that's another thing to look at, that mental anguish around the story. So it's important to sort of see that. But it was also important to me to have someone, read, or I've read or heard someone say, like, you could also, like, sit and look at a part of your body that's feeling good or not hurting. Like, it's kind of like our whole life, if we're just really looking at our worst shortcoming, sort of all the time, and never appreciating that we ever did anything positive. That's just not, that's not balance. I mean, ultimately, we could see it's all the same, and it would be fine to look only at the negative, because it's not negative. It's Buddha nature arising. But until we get to that point, there is some health in really in managing this. And so, and I could imagine too, like if someone had they're, paralyzed because somebody shot them, or so, something where you have a real story with your pain that is so mentally hard to deal with. That's a little bit different than working with a pain that I broke my arm, can be fixed. So anyway, so I just think that's interesting, and it's very interesting to see just like it was mentioned, like the body sensations triggering the mental concern causing the body to feel worse, and that's important to see all that, but it also makes it sometimes more challenging. It was more challenging than I would have thought before I had experience with pain, significant pain. It's like, it didn't really turn out the way I would have predicted. So I think it's a little humbling to try sometimes to work with this. And I think the idea of not only using that can be helpful.
I'll add one little pithy thought that came to me is that sometimes when I listen, I hear something that sounds like to practice with this means that you should, it's like a moral imperative to always have a really bad time.
And notice it.
With unwavering one-pointed attention on having a bad time. And it is exactly that ridiculous. And all the kinds of ways that we dance with all the sorts of things that come up are part of the dance. And seeing those, there's not just one way to approach it. Sometimes, if you can actually ignore pain, you have in a certain way proved one thing, that you're not actually trapped. You're not trapped. There are things that will be so central in your stream of experience that you can't ignore them. And developing a capacity to deal with and be with and really see into whatever arises, that will be a benefit in that situation. Having an upgraded Netflix subscription probably won't work at that point. But so the things that we can do to prove that we're not trapped, we actually have to refine those skills over time, and it's very good to, if we work with just the neutral, what we call the neutral experiences of being, and just be able to become very familiar with experience and how experience arises, without all our stories about it. The more we can kind of widen our scope of attention, widen the scope of what we can hold in that, and see it, and eventually, all things could arise in that space of awareness. All things could arise in that in a way where we weren't trapped, and not necessarily that would be, even we might have that only occasionally. Something that is just really dreadful and totally in our face, the sense of being trapped by it may completely evaporate for a moment. And then we have another kind of proof of concept that we're not trapped. We're not intrinsically trapped. But that the conditions, the internal, external supports for that might be very unstable. So we can't just say, oh, well, once we nail it, it's always going to be good. So it's a variable thing. But you have to. It's a dance that goes on. It's a dance that goes on, and the more we can have a kind of a sense of openness and some humor about it, and so sometimes we're all 2 left feet and stepping on our own toes, and everybody else's, and well, that happens. A kind of a lightness in the middle of it, and a lightness, and working with our ordinary experience is actually a really good prerequisite. That's kind of a great prerequisite. I need actually to do that over and over again.
Miriam, did you have?
Thank you, Dora and Bill, for raising those issues. I wanted to share something that I remembered, perhaps, not came up with, but this week. We were talking several weeks ago, I guess, about trauma and dealing with that, and it occurred to me that at work and in other places, I experience fear a lot, all the time, really. It's just this kind of grinding, like the internal alarm bells in my brain are constantly sort of going off. And I thought about telling a client about how if you just remember that you are not that, that fear is not me. And I thought, well, why don't I try that?
So we're saying all the time.
If you can teach it, you can do it. So I really did spend a moment just going, okay, there's the fear. There's that internal klaxon constantly going off. Yep, that's part, that is part of me. There it is. And then it was like a quarter step back and a quarter step relief, quarter relief. And that was just enough to give me hope that I know it's going to come back, as you were saying, because it probably will. I mean, I'm human. Things are going to make that internal klaxon go off again. But then I can also remember, as miserable as this is, I always have an opportunity to take a quarter step back, So just that knowledge, even though it doesn't put me in a peaceful state completely, just the knowledge that I can reach that peaceful state at some point is really, thanks, it's a relief.
Thank you, Miriam. Yes, Cynthia.
I guess it's, what's coming to mind is another use of the word remember, which is, may we remember all the tools that we have in our kit. Yeah.
Yes, and yeah.
I was just going to say, Mom, that
Yeah.
I think I've been working a lot with having confidence and trust in the letting go and not identification. And that it's a good jumping point when you really relax into that trusting that this is the process, this is what we've been taught.
Yeah, so there's a comment in the back about developing, and I would say this is a very gradual process. Would you agree?
Yes.
A very gradual process of developing confidence and trust that the things that are happening are exactly the way they are supposed to be.
Yeah, for me, there's a different use of confidence in terms of Buddhist path too, that instead of like faith or belief, I've encountered having confidence that if we actually do and bring these tools to use, over time they will reap benefits, even though you might not be able to see them, right after a session of practice or something like that. But
looking back over months or years, you realize, wow, I'm really dealing with things differently and living differently than I did when I first started coming here. And that longer view confidence is really important to me.
So there's a comment from Linda about having the confidence that the positive, the fruits of practice, even if you don't see them immediately, do appear over time with if she does the practices faithfully.
I just wanted to add that,
Yes.
when we conceptually go over an issue or a problem that we see in a situation, and you go over and over that the answer's not there. Trust that piece that you can go the next step.
So the comment that if you're going around and around conceptually, then the answer isn't there, and developing some confidence and trust that is the case, and you can let go of that.
Comes right back to what Dilopa said.
Yes.
Don't try
to figure anything out.
It's not where the answer is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, thank you everybody for that nice discussion. And let's dedicate the meeting.
By this virtue may I quickly realize Mahamudra and establish all beings without exception in this state.
Thank you. Hopefully people, anyone who can stay to celebrate Ryan and Putzak, please do.
That's the trouble.
The two guests are going to be
I don't know.
Can I write down your little card?
You can have it.
Oh, yeah.